Hi everyone, and welcome to the book Refuge. And this video is going to be a wild ride, friends. Okay, I'm just warning y'all now. We're here to review and rant about Darkdawn by Kristoff. But this is going to be long. I'm sure you can see that, whatever. You say these things. So without further ado, let's get into my disclaimer here, because it's going to be an adventure. So first off, and I will be looking down because I have these notes set down here. Disclaimer and feelings, all right? First, I love Kristoff. I have read almost everything that he's written. I've got to meet him earlier this year. I've watched pretty much every interview that's available with him on YouTube. I interact with him on Twitter whenever possible. He's really responsive to his fans, and so I've had some fun interactions with him. I adore this human, and I will continue to adore this human in the future. Yeah, that's straight up, that's true. I really like this author. Secondly, though, he is under very little obligation to give us what we want. Of course, authors, they have their story in mind. That doesn't mean they never tweak things for people, that things never happen because of, the way fans feel about a certain character. We've heard tons of stories about that. That happens. And I respect that, and I understand that I don't need to be given everything that I want, all right? This is also known. This happens in plenty of books. It's nothing new. We're used to this as readers. But finally, I think this novel is objectively good. And I'm going to talk about the things that I like. I have a lot of things to talk about where I was excited, where I was so enthralled with the story, where I was just in awe of certain things. But I have some feelings, and if you did too, maybe this can be cathartic for the both of us, because we're going to get a little ranty, okay? So the way I'm going to set this up is I'm going to talk non-spoilers, which will be pretty vague. I mean, you really shouldn't be watching this review if you haven't read the other two books. So I'll just give you like general feelings and how I feel about the series as a whole, and give you, that kind of feeling. And then we'll jump into spoilers, of which I have 2 full pages about that. And then I will put a timestamp for when I come back for my overall thoughts and rating after ranting about everything. Okay? So let's get started. First with some non-spoilery thoughts. I loved being back in the world. I was immediately immersed back in. I love at the beginning of his books where he has, the dramatist personae, kind of like Pierce Brown does too, where it like lists everyone, because that's important, especially with fantasy authors who have many characters, names that sound alike, multiple names for the same person. It's really important to have that. I loved it. I immediately loved being back with my people. I loved having Trick back. I was so excited to see what was going to happen with him. Very excited to see what was going to happen with him. There was a new character that I loved a lot. His name is Cloud Corleone. We'll talk about him in the spoiler section, but just to give you broad thoughts, he is a pirate and smuggler that we meet pretty early on, and he reminds me of a cross between like Jack Sparrow and Nikolai from the Grishaverse, and I really liked him a lot. Like, I underlined so many of his. Yeah, I totally annotated this beast just because I couldn't help it. And he had some of my favorite things. Also, we got to spend a lot of time with Jenn, and he was really hard at the beginning because, this 8-year-old kid, he doesn't know any other father except for Skeva. And I mean, Skeva is his father. We know this now. So he doesn't get why this girl is coming in and has stolen him and just, murdered his father in front of him, and he's been pretty brainwashed by this guy and told that all these people are basically lying about him. And so he was a rough character, but I really did like Jenn, and I like how his character arc went through the story. I wanted to punch him quite a few times. Mr. Kindly had some sassy things to say, and I agreed with them most of the time. Yeah, it was just as bloody, crass, sexy, breathtaking, heartbreaking as the other two. And so in looking at it as that way, I do think that, you know, Jay carried that through. I loved being with the Gladiatai. I think that's how you say them. They join us at the beginning of this, and I really fell for them a lot, even more harder than I did in God's Grave. So that was really exciting. We got to spend more time with them. Deaths were brutal and painful. I marked a spot like on the top of my book every time there was a death that like we knew the character for longer than like one book. And in particular, which again, these will be in the spoiler section, but a few of the deaths I have some serious feelings about. Again, one other thing I'd say in non-spoilery that's to the negative, I do feel that there was a lot of dragging along in this one. The other two, we had a sure purpose, we were moving. Even in Nevernight, where there's lots of time at the church, like each skill Mia is learning is very important, and every sex scene and every interaction, it all has a purpose of like building those characters and fleshing out this world. And there was a lot of times in this one where, though things were happening that I liked, it felt like a lot of lip service to us, and that felt a little like beneath Jay for me, because in the past he's found a way to give us that excitement and what we want, but also it still had a purpose. And I mean, this time definitely the sex scenes had nothing to do with the story, and that's fine. I mean, Jay says even like, I put the smutty bits in because people like them, and I think it's funny, and I don't care that he writes sex scenes like a man. Like, it doesn't bother me. He is a man. He is a man. It's okay. But we didn't have time for them in this one, and so I think it could have been like fit in differently. But anyway, so let's get done with this non-spoiler. Overall, it's still Jay, and honestly, like, I could hear him saying a lot of the words, and part of that comes from one of the things which will be talked about in the spoiler section, but you'll probably be hearing about it if you watch any other reviews, because it was very frustrating. And just, I know it's not condescending, like I know he's not being condescending, but it was a little too much of breaking of the fourth wall, and a little too much of like wink wink nudge nudge to you, to the point that it pulled me out sometimes. Like, I would put the book down because I'm like, really Jay, like, just tell me the story you're trying to say. And the information that was conveyed through this plot twist, I feel like we could have got a different way, and I'll explain that in there. So in this objectively speaking side of me, I would have given this a 5-star just because it was so, there's so many things that are good about it. And if I didn't have the heart of a romantic, I might give it a 5 stars. But we're going to talk about why it's not a 5-star for me. So if you don't want any spoilers, skip ahead to this time, and I'll give you my final rating, which, spoiler, isn't a 5-star, and we'll wrap everything up. But now we're going to jump into spoilers. So, spoilers, now's the time to leave if you don't want anything ruined for you, because here we go. All right. So, the way I want to do the spoilers is I'm kind of going to go character by character, and I'll end with the main 3 people at the end who I have a lot to say. So, I'm going to start with Skeva, who, surprise, we didn't kill him at the end of God's Grave. We killed one of his doubles. So Skeva has been having Muriel, the weaver, make him body doubles and put them in different places. And I thought that was super clever, because I was like, there's no way that we could have killed him that easily. You know, I knew that was a thing. So I thought that was very clever. He's very evil. He's a coward in a lot of ways. He's very powerful. And at the end of this book, or not totally the end, but when he's like having his final ramp up, he finds out some information from Jonin, who, Jonin is 8 years old. So when you read it and Jonin makes bad decisions, just remember he's 8 years old and he's not supposed to be perfect. Jonin gives him some information, and he's able to kind of like ramp up his powers. Skeva also has a passenger whose name is Whisper, and it's a viper, and I hate that effing snake. I'm gonna try not to swear too much in this, just in case you're watching it with your kids or whatever. But I hated that effing snake, and I'm gonna tell you why in just a sec. Besides it being a snake, which he basically had a Nagini, okay? He had a Nagini. Ugh. And so he gets really powered up and he starts to go crazy because he took too much juice, basically. Like, he took too much juice because he finds out that the more shadow he consumes, the more powerful he is, which we knew this about Mia. And this is why Jonnan knows this, because when she killed a Darkin, you know, she took on their extra power. And he does this. And when he gets Jonnan, Eclipse has been staying with Jonnan. Mia has had Eclipse staying with him, keeping him safe, keeping him fearless, and just helping him get by. Because again, this is an 8-year-old boy. And when Jonnan gets kidnapped back to his father, Whisper attacks Eclipse. And we came to the first death in a line of deaths that really affected me. There were deaths up to this point, but Eclipse, her end was painful and heartbreaking. And I love that Shadow Wolf. I love her. Mr. Kindly is the snarky, like, cool awesomeness, but Eclipse is the conscience, and she is kind, and she is loving for a shadow. And it hurt me so bad because Jonnan is going to stand up for Eclipse. He's like holding this dagger and he's going to kill Eclipse, or kill Whisper, and his father tells him to stop and tells him to let Whisper kill Eclipse. And there's this line that gets said, father was just another name for God in his mind. And so he does what his father says, and Eclipse gets consumed by Whisper. And it was just so painful. It was so painful because Jonnan, he loves Eclipse, but he's in his father's thrall and he can't disobey his father. He just can't do it. And even though he's having feelings about Mia and starting to see her as a sister, he's faced with his father and he can't do less. And Eclipse, she calls out for Cassius. She sees Jonnan as Cassius to her because she was with Cassius since he was a boy and she protected him, and her duty was to protect Jonnan, and she's losing him, and it was horrible and it hurt so bad. Okay, moving along. So that death hurt. Cloud Corleone, pirate, scoundrel. He's amazeballs. He ends up as our king of the scoundrels at the end. We run into him pretty early in the book. Ash and Trick secure passage on his boat, the Bloody Maid, and Skaeva's men are looking for Mia, because Mia and Jonnan are with as well, but they're like hiding. And he figures out who they are. He figures out who Mia is. And he'd seen Mia kill the bishop and try to kill Skaeva. And it turns out that the bishop that she killed had abused Cloud's brother when he was young, and would have abused Cloud if he hadn't ran away. And so he basically promises to be her man until the end of time type of thing. But he owns a ship, and we get into some really fun situations with him. I love Cloud. He is really saucy and fun, and like I said, he's this mixture of Jack Sparrow and Nikolai, and I just get the warm fuzzies from him. And I had a great time with him, and I'm really glad he lived because I was worried. But there's a cool point in the story where Mia becomes a pirate queen by killing the king of the pirates, and then when Mia dies, because we all know she dies, everybody, we know, we've been told, he takes over as the king of scoundrels, and it's really exciting for him. I was happy for him. Again, the Gladiatai, they're a little more essential to this book. They come along with us to be Mia's team. Mia doesn't want them to come because it's more people that she cares about, and but they have skills, they have things to help her with. They are her brothers and sisters in arms, and two of them, Bryn and Wavewaker, are actually the first two major deaths in the book. This happens before Eclipse. and they are about to make love, and they get killed by Hush, and it is bloody and awful in a J. Kristoff fashion, and it hurt. And so this leads to a big conflict because Mia did not want them to come along. She didn't want any of the Gladotai to come along because she knew she would lose some of them, and she didn't want them there. And Mr. Kindly talked her into it. And so this leads to a break between Mr. Kindly and Mia, and she banishes him from her shadow. And ooh, it pissed me off so much. And we knew he'd be back. Like, there's no way she kicked Mr. Kindly from her forever. And his return is really powerful too, because it looks like he's betrayed her, but really he's been helping her the whole time, you know, of course. But it hurt for Mia to send him away, and she spends the rest of the book regretting it and wishing for him to be back, but he's off doing some good things and helps us later on. But ooh, that was painful. Like, that caused a tear when she banished him because it was painful. All right, Mercurio and Alias, or Alias. So Alias is the chronicler. So, all right, this leads into, now I'm starting to have some gripes here. So Mercurio was kidnapped by the Red Church at, I think it was the end of the last one, or maybe the beginning of this one. I don't know, but either way, like, the first scenes we have with him, he's at the Red Church, and he's being held captive by orders from Skeva so that they can use him as leverage over Mia. And they're just kind of letting him wander around. So he has a lot of interactions with, especially Adonai and Miriel, who Adonai owes Mia a debt, a blood debt, because she saved his life. And so that causes Adonai to do some, you know, some good things to help us out. But he's also dark, sexy, crazy vampire man, and it's weird. It's just weird. And Miriel is just as gross and creepy as always, and they have a weird semi-incestuous relationship that is just creepy, but they're also cool because they talk weird and it's fun and whatever. But Mercurio is trying to find a way to help Mia, and the Nevernight Chronicle, these lovely books, they are a part of the book. And there's some people like meta things, some people like the book that they're reading to be mentioned. There are plenty of fantasy stories where the story that you're reading was probably written by someone in the book. This happens in Game of Thrones, this happens in The Wheel of Time, this happens in other stories where there's someone, usually a literary person, who's writing the story of our hero as it's happening. However, in this book, it's used as the Chronicle is telling everything that happened to her, and in fact, the third book is like fake written with a fake ending, so that when the bad guys find it, they're like, this tells us exactly how Mia's gonna break in and try to escape or get Mercurio, and it's a fake, like they faked a book. And that part was cool because Alias has this cool line where he says, "Don't F with librarians, young lady. We know the power of words." And that's because he fakes the book. And at the end of the book, Mercurio actually does write the books. So he writes the Nevernight Chronicle. He wrote these books we're reading. It's his footnotes we've been reading. It's his sassy comments. It's his beginning and endings. And it's been Mercurio. And I don't know how I feel about it. I think I'm okay with it that he wrote them. I'm not okay that he wrote them in the context of how it was. Like, if just the part at the end where we find out he's the one who wrote the whole thing was the thing, I would have been okay with that, because there's a part in the last chapter where he says, "The Nevernight Chronicle by Mercurio of Lys." Like, if that was all that was included, that would be cool, because then we'd know all those things we read were Mercurio. But the fact that even the footnotes start to like sass us back, and as people read the Nevernight Chronicle, they comment on all the things that Jay has done. Like, wow, why does he write about sex so much? Why does he use these words when he describes a woman's lady parts? Why does the author use footnotes? Why is like, nobody's gonna buy this book, nobody reads fantasy? Like, all these things that are criticisms that Jay has got, they're just unnecessary, and they would throw me out right away. Like, it was two fun characters talking about it, and If it had been something else, it would have been a cute scene, but the fact that they're talking about the sex scenes that he's written, it just threw me totally out. And like, someone gets to the end of the book and they're like, oh, I got to the part where Ash killed Trick. It sucks. And I'm just like, I didn't want it in my book, and it really annoyed me. And that was a big gripe that I had. So, all right, we're winding down here. We're going to get to my major problems with this book. All these things I've listed, they've either been a mild criticism, like I could have lived with it, or they're things that I loved. And now we're getting into, like, okay. So, Ash, Trick, and Mia. This love triangle nobody asked for. I was under the impression and the painful misunderstanding that Mia was using Ash in God's grave. That they were having sex and having feelings. And I knew they were real on Ash's side. Like, I knew that. I knew she loves her. Like, it's obvious. But Mia, with her penchant for revenge, with it burning in her belly to get revenge against people who've wronged her, for her to forgive and love the woman who murdered Trick for no reason, and who tried to kill her as well, for her to not only be sleeping with her, but to love her and to defend her to Trick's face. It's a character assassination of Mia, in my opinion. In my opinion. Getting Trick back was so exciting to me. He's dark and broken, and he doesn't have a heartbeat at the beginning of this, and he is an undead being who we find out crawled his way back from comfort and peace. It's called the hearth, where you sit and enjoy your afterlife. He looked at it and looked around and decided he couldn't be at peace without the woman he loved. And for all you want to say the fact that, okay, is his love greater than anyone else's who's ever loved someone? Like, he knew this girl for like a year, was really only dating her for like a month, and then died. Whatever you want to say about that, let's say he loves her that much. Because I can buy that. I'm a romantic. Like I said, I can buy that he would crawl his way out of death for her, to help her, and to bring her a message. Because I'm not even touching on the ending plot of this, because really, I was confused about it. It was kind of cool, but whatever, whatever. He crawled his way out for her to find that Mia is sleeping with Ash and is in love with her. And he is constantly confronted by it. Ash rubs it in his face every second. She says, I don't trust him. You're trying to steal my girl. I'm sleeping with her. She's mine. I love her. Back off. And Trick he defends himself to Ash. He's like, you murdered me. Like, why would, I don't understand this. And him and Mia have that conversation. And Ash throws it at him as like, you killed people too. You passed your initiation. That means you killed a kid. That means you're just as evil as me. If the thing was reversed, you would kill me. And like, yes, all that is true. It is true. But the part that sucks is that Mia's with her. Like, it's one thing if you can be like, okay, you did what you had to do, I get it. But it's completely different if she's willing to screw her and then love her. And then not only love her, but their love is so true that it's the way Mia is able to survive death. Because guess what? Mia and Ash, they both come back from the dead. And you can say that the goddess gave it as Mia as a gift, because Mia gives her life to help the goddess of the moon set the world back to rights, so that there is a regular day and a regular night, and there isn't never night anymore. But what did Ash do? Like, Ash, it's described that she uses the same path that Trick used, the path he tells her about, to get back to Mia as well. Like, and that Ash's love is enough, but Trick's wasn't. When Trick shows himself to be selfless and forgiving, he forgives Ash, willing to do whatever is best for me is good, and in fact, kills himself again. I mean, he didn't kill himself the first time, but he kills himself to remove himself as an obstacle so that Mia doesn't have to keep feeling guilty that he loves her. He says this quote, "I love you, Mia. You are my heart. You are my queen. I'd do anything you asked me, even the things you wouldn't." And the things that she wouldn't ask is for him to jump off a cliff. When he's getting his heartbeat back, when his flesh is returning to human flesh, when he is close to humanity again, he removes himself from the situation so Ash and Mia can have a fucking happily ever after at their dream lake house. Yeah. That's where we sit. It would be one thing too if he couldn't be with her because he was undead, you know. That'd be one thing if he came back and like Mia wants to be with him, but she's like, I can never be with you. You're undead, but like Ash is here. She's real. She's flesh and blood, and she's helped me to move on. Like, that is an argument to be made. However, he's turning back into human flesh. And then Ash dies, and the same thing happens to her. But when Ash does it, Ash is the hope Mia needs to survive. The two undead girls get to live out the rest of their history together, and Trick does the thing that Mia would never ask him to do. He sacrifices everything. And his pain, his sacrifice, his willingness to move on, to forgive, is pointless. And that is what I can't forgive this book for. I can forgive the self-flagellation, the self-referentialism, the overuse of sex, of cuss, of all those things. That is all what makes Nevernight Chronicle. But to change Mia's character so much that she would not only forgive the woman who murdered her love, but to now call that woman the soulmate of her. I don't understand how Ash and Mia became an endgame, and I don't think I'll ever get over it. And if I was rating this book only on my personal feelings, it would be a 2-star book. Because the feeling at the end sours all the rest of the joy that I had. And once once Trick jumped off that, I was done, because I was like, all right, Mia, you've proved to be the heartless bitch you always tell us you are, but other people see differently, but Eclipse sees differently, but, you know, Jonan sees a sister to love, you know, who Mercurio calls a daughter, and that's a gut-wrenching scene. It is beautiful when he says, if I had a daughter, and Mia says, you did. And when he's going to write her chronicle so that no one will forget her. It's all wiped away for me when the last scene is Ash and Mia and Mr. Kindly at this place. It's just wiped away for me. So, mixing all these together, my final thoughts are that I'm going to give it 4 stars, because maybe not everyone will feel the same as me. I think a lot of people do, though. My friends who've read it, they're feeling that way right now. And it is bittersweet as any ending of a trilogy is. And I do still love Jay. And it's his story. He can do this. He can say that Ash and Mia are endgame, and we just have to go shove it. But I will give this a 4-star on Goodreads for the goodness of it. But it's a 2-star in my book because it broke my heart, and not in the way that it's broken but bittersweet and you'll heal again. It's broken in the way of, you've taken my trust and you've taken my hope for a powerful story, and you gave me a big F you and left me with ashes. So thank you so much for watching. Remember, this is all in good fun. It's just a story. It isn't real. Ash and Mia aren't really there. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I make new videos every Monday and Thursday, and sometimes other days. Please make sure to subscribe if you like this, and comment down below if you have any feelings the way that I do. If there's spoiler, make sure you mark, because there's this non-spoiler and spoiler review. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.